Yep, start your videos. Do it. Yep.
Do you want them to see?
Yeah, hit again.
Hit it? Wait, that's
There you
not
go.
it.
Now hit mute real quick.
Ask if you can hit it. She can hit
Phyllis, can you hear me?
it. She's on.
Yes, I can.
You
There
can.
you go.
Okay,
There you
great.
go.
The last time I called the meeting, everybody else was fine, and I was the one who couldn't be heard. So,
No, you're loud and clear.
good, good. Thank you.
No, you're already on. You just hit mute so that they don't hear anything. Just
Jenny, there's a slight chance that we may not have a quorum. Mayor, today's the first day of school, so Mary can't participate, and Karen Horridge is having computer problems, although we made sure she knew about the phone-in option. And hopefully Amy will be here, and if so, then we'll have a quorum. But and we're not sure about Ray.
Okay. Lisa sent me an email about that if we just can't do the August minutes approval if
Right.
we can't get, I think we need 4 of us. So
That's right. And even if Amy does come, we still wouldn't have a quorum unless Ray shows up.
right. And it sounds like Amy's trying to, but she may have to drop off.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It's not from Lisa's email. It sounded like Amy is going to try to join, but she may have to hop off if she
Right.
can join. So, because I missed the meeting in August, did I assume those minutes were approved for July? Or wait, no, that would have been June's minutes?
Yeah, Mary,
No, that July's minutes.
yeah, so we've approved of everything up to September.
Okay. For August. Right. Today's August. Today we could approve August.
I mean August, sorry.
I was just saying all the wrong months. I don't even know what's going on these days. I'm just lucky if I can figure out, be on to my meetings on time.
Serena, in order for Stacy and Philip to share their screen, do they need to be co-host?
I will check the settings now. That shouldn't be the case. No, they should be able to share, but we
Okay.
can make both of them co-host.
It looks like Stacy is a co-host.
Yeah, I already did that because I thought maybe they would need to be in order to
Okay.
share their screen.
This is, we should maybe test it out. Hey, Stacy, I'm gonna un-co-host you and just try to, in the next 2 minutes, share your screen, and then we can start the meeting after that.
All right.
Let's see.
Am I shared?
You are.
You are, but unshare again. I just took your co-host away, so try that one more time.
All
You're
right.
so
too fast.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the settings are correct so that any of the participants can share. So you won't have to make Philip a co-host either.
Okay.
Oh, there's Amy. So it is 3:30. Phyllis, should we just get started since we are not quite sure about others and see what happens?
Sure.
Okay. So let's get started. And then if somehow we end up with, I guess we would need one more person and we could do our minutes. Otherwise, we'll just wait. And then we have our informational items. I think because we have two people with us that are presenting, maybe if members have questions, we could wait if the group agrees. But Phyllis, if you wanted to go through some of the highlights you had first, or we could hold that, it's up to you.
I think your suggestion makes sense. We can go ahead with the presentation and do the info items at the end.
Okay. So do you want to do some introductions?
Sure.
Yeah. Great.
So on my screen, Philip Holbrook is on the far, well, now he's in the middle. So Philip is our relatively new housing program manager. He oversees the housing choice voucher program that's housed under DSS. And Stacy Pethia is with community development, and she is senior housing planner. Is that correct? Is that the right? Good enough. Okay. So I asked them both to come and do a presentation that would basically combine Stacy's work in community development in developing a housing policy for the county, and then also for Philip to update you on our housing choice program, housing choice voucher program. Some of you were on the advisory board when Lynn Witt came to do a presentation, but then others of you are new. And so given housing is a critical topic or need in this community, I wanted you to hear kind of what how the county is working with that. And so it would be great if you guys could introduce yourselves and then let Stacy and Philip know what district you're from and who your respective supervisor is. So I'll go from my top left, and that's Catherine. So if you can go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself. Unmute. There you go.
Okay, all right. I'm Catherine Burton, and I'm from Samuel Miller District. Liz Palmer is my supervisor.
Thank you. Jenny?
I'm Jenny Moore. I represent the Whitehall District, and Malik is the supervisor.
You're still on the Planning Commission, correct?
I am, yes, I'm in my 5th year. Through my 2nd term, 1st year, 2nd term, and represent Whitehall District also on the Planning Commission.
So some of Stacy's presentation may be familiar to you.
I missed the work session, unfortunately, but I did read a lot of the materials, so it won't be too much of a repetition because unfortunately I didn't get to hear from her.
Awesome.
Yeah, so.
And you're getting a much shorter version, so.
Right. Well, I read that packet backwards and forwards, so it was really well done. Thank you.
Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Lawfer, and I'm with the Ravenna District, and B. Lepisto is the supervisor from there.
Okay, so I think Philip's going first. Is that correct? All right, so Philip, I'm going to turn it over to you. It looks like you are able to screen share, but for some reason you have trouble, then I will make you co-host.
All right, let's see if we can get this to work. All right, can you all see that?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, so as Phyllis mentioned, thank you all, first of all, for having me today. I'm excited to share with you all about the Office of Housing. As Phyllis said, I'm new, so bear with me if I misrepresent anything about the office. I've been around since May, and coming on in the middle of the pandemic has proven to be challenging and interesting, to say the least. But I have an incredible team that I work with who they've been fantastic keeping the organization moving throughout our staffing changes that we've undergone over the last 4 or 5 months. So I'll go ahead and lead off though with sharing with you about the Office of Housing. I'll share kind of a topical overview of some of what we do, and then we'll probably leave some time at the end for some questions if you have any. So this is who we are. We are a 7-person team. We have 3 housing specialists. So if you are familiar with DSS setups, in essence, they are the caseworkers who work with our clients. Shakora Anderson is the newest addition to the team. She is our office associate, and she has been an incredible person to join up and really help us as we are all working remotely, to have somebody that's in office full-time to help out with some of the in-office logistics. Bill Perry wears 2 hats. He is our waitlist manager. He's also in charge of our housing quality standards. So that's called our HQS inspector, which are federal standards for housing that he goes out and does inspections on units prior to move-in and during tenancy. Ray Hammond is our rental assistance coordinator. He is the longest standing member of the Office of Housing. He's been around for quite a while, so some of you may know Ray. And he takes care of all of our financials and reporting to HUD. And I am the housing program manager. So I'm relatively new again, and am able to manage this awesome team and help oversee the incredible work that they help fulfill. So our mission as an office is to promote opportunities for low-income county citizens and residents within the Thomas Jefferson Area Planning District to secure and maintain safe, decent, accessible, and affordable housing. Now we achieve that with 3 programs. I like to view them as that rather than one big program, because there are some specifics to each that I'd like to break down for you. But the Housing Choice Voucher Program is is what many people know as Section 8 housing, but it's a new name, but same general concept. We are a public housing agency, which I have to say up front, which is a little bit different than an authority, in that we do not own any public housing. You are probably familiar with Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority, where they actually own properties and tenants can live in those properties. We do not own any property as an Office of Housing. We simply provide and administer the vouchers throughout these programs. So Housing Choice is our tenant-based voucher program. We also have project-based vouchers and moderate rehab. So I'll dive into each of those a little bit further down the slides. But the basics and processes amongst those 3 programs are very similar. Clients and residents will go through an application process with us so that they can make it onto a waiting list, and they'll actually be awaiting selection to go through eligibility. And after eligibility, they are awarded a voucher. And the voucher, in essence, provides a family a subsidy, and that subsidy goes towards a portion of their rent. Some clients with vouchers will be leasing on the open market, meaning that they'll actually go into the private market, the rental market within our jurisdiction, and search for housing. Or others will be project-based, which is the project-based and mod rehab programs. And I'll go into what those mean in a minute. But it all boils down to subsidized housing, which is the total tenant payment, TTP, plus ACOH, which is the Office of Housing subsidy that's paid. That equals the unit rent plus a utility allowance. So the amount that a unit costs to rent plus the utility allowance, the client pays a portion and we pay a portion. and everybody wins there. People are able to get safe and decent housing at a subsidized rate. And I'll go into a bit about the subsidy as well as we move forward. So the Housing Choice Voucher, a bit of a deeper dive there. It is the largest voucher program that we administer. It's also HUD's primary program. Currently, we have 284 HCV families. Those are broken down, as you can see there, by different categories. General are going to be clients that are renting on the open market, but don't have any specific targeted approaches to their voucher. 71 of those vouchers are mainstream, meaning that they are rented to families that have an individual living in the household who is living with a disability, age 18 to 62. We have some family unification vouchers, which are actually enabling families to children to stay out of foster care, or children who are in foster care to be able to seek housing back with their parents. So those are something that have been around since the 90s, and we're just starting to kind of reinvigorate some, so that look forward to that, some reports coming on that in the future. And then we have tenant protection vouchers, which basically, if clients lose housing, assistant housing for any reason, we port them into a tenant protection voucher, which is another subset of our larger HCV program. A bit more about the program specifics. Again, we have the application process that we go through, which is step one of a two-step process. The second step is eligibility. During the application, we just get initial income information, the number of individuals that would be living in the home as part of the family, and clients can indicate a preference. And I'll go into preferences in a minute too. The wait list, unfortunately, takes some time, and I don't like that. That's one of the things that I'm working to shift with our programming, is ensure that we have shorter wait list times. But unfortunately, it's the HUD PHA structure is large and slow moving, and it takes time for people to be able to get a voucher. But we're going to try to take some strategies to shift that process a little bit quicker. When clients are selected, they have to go through an eligibility, and they're selected when we basically have funds or vouchers available. And that's kind of a complicated process that I get to think through, of projecting out how many vouchers we have and the funding we have, and to kind of go through a logic process of when we can issue new vouchers, which the exciting news is we are doing so right now, which makes me very happy that we're able to get some folks into homes. The eligibility process, again, is step two of this two-step process, and that's where we really do a deeper dive into financials. We verify a preference that someone says they have. We go through a screening, various background checks, tell the client all about the program so that they learn what it means to be a part of the program. And then they're able to get their voucher. They go through a lease up process where they actually enter into a lease with the landlord. We do not really get involved with that. We have to see the lease, but we are not directly connecting someone to a place to live. They are actually having to go out and seek an apartment on their own if they're part of the Housing Choice Voucher program. After a year, a client can choose to move elsewhere, and we do have the ability for them to port, meaning that a client can go anywhere in the US with their voucher, which is a really neat part of the program. It really offers mobility. If someone decides they want to move to the West Coast for whatever reason and they have a voucher, they can take it with them and go and seek housing in another area. So that's our main program. Our second would be the project-based, and these are different from tenant-based vouchers. They instead are tied to a specific unit. There are three that we have in our area right now. Treesdale, some of you may know, Crozet Meadows is another, and the Crossings is the third. These have separate wait lists, but a lot of the policies and the procedures that we go through are the same for the HCD program. There are some differences, and the key difference being that they have to live in the specific unit at one of those, in one of those buildings, versus being able to go out and find one anywhere in our jurisdiction. Some advantages, though, of project-based are that there's no searching required. You don't have to actually go out and fight against somebody else for a unit. You are able to safely get a unit without any searching. There's stability for developers, and this is there's a lot of strategy behind project-based vouchers that we're diving into, and Stacy can probably speak to this as well. But it's a great strategy to be able to bring developers to the area to create affordable housing, because there can be tax incentives that are tied to project-based vouchers. Or the tax structure behind project-based. I'll let Stacy talk on that front. And there's no risk of rent increase. So when someone moves into a unit, the rent is fixed and is not going to increase, which could happen on the open market in those tenant-based. I think the most exciting thing about project-based vouchers are that supportive services can be tied to them. So you could have units that are for a certain population, an elderly population, or you could have a unit that is specifically for an individual who has been at risk of homelessness or is currently homeless. You can have mental health services tied in. So there's a lot of creative ways that we can utilize project-based vouchers. And that's something that I want us to dive into as an office, and I think that we will at some point. Moderate rehab is the third. Scottsville Schools is what you may know of. There are 34 units that we have down in Scottsville. It's a 55 plus population, very similar to project-based vouchers, and the vouchers tied to a unit. But this is an older program, so there's really no new moderate rehabs that we're doing. We are one of 2 PHAs in the entirety of the Commonwealth of Virginia that administers moderate rehab. So we're kind of an odd one out there, but it's a great program, and it enables individuals to have that safe, decent housing. So who qualifies for our program? Primarily based on income, adjusted for family size. And you can see the chart there that has our breakdowns based on area median income for Charlottesville, Albemarle. 30% is extremely low income. So that's what we tend to focus on, are extremely low income families. We do work with low income as well, which is 50% of AMI. Preferences is one of the more interesting aspects because we're able to target with selection of clients for vouchers. We're able to target specific preferences, meaning we could target someone who has a disability in the household, or individuals who are living and working in Albemarle. We also have veteran preferences, VAWA, so if someone's been a victim of domestic violence, and a new preference, which is homelessness. And that's kind of being led by a grant that Phyllis wrote with Anthony from TJAC. I believe that was last year, Phyllis, or somewhat recently. And that's a new preference that's going to enable individuals to make it into our mainstream program. And they're going to be ranked towards the top when we select, because they have that preference of they've either been homeless or are currently experiencing homelessness. Eligibility is also based on citizenship and debts owed. So clients cannot owe debts to other PHAs. They have to be debt-free to a PHA to be able to get a voucher with us. Payment standards kind of boils down to how much we can pay for a unit, and that's based off of fair market rents, which are issued by HUD annually. And we as a PHA have some flexibility there, which is one of the things that we come to the board for, is setting our payment standards. And that we can set them at anywhere from 90 to 100% of fair market rents. So it gives us some flexibility to weather some of the ups and downs of the economy, but also some of the challenges that our area might face. Unfortunately, right now, the fair market rent has gone down, which is kind of interesting to have that happen in the middle of a pandemic. So one of the things that we're going to be bringing up is a proposal in the coming weeks as to how we can react to that and how we can adjust our payment standards so that our clients aren't hit with this decrease in the amount of money that they're going to receive towards their subsidy. That's what it kind of boils down to, is how much of the subsidy they're going to receive and how much they're going to be responsible for as they pay their rent. So payment standards interesting, and it enables us to calculate our rent. These are the current payment standards for Albemarle, and I'll let you take a look at this slide. It's broken down by bedroom size and family size. And this is the amount that a family, that kind of helps boil down how much a family is going to expect to pay. Clients are expected to pay around 30% of their adjusted income towards rent. So you can see an example down there at the bottom where a total tenant portion would be $300 if they bring in $1,000 a month. And so if we're looking at a 2-bedroom at a payment standard of $1,262, the max amount that a client and family would be expected to pay is that $300. We cover the remaining $962. So it offers a lot of flexibility for individuals in which place they can rent. That payment standard is what they're locked into, but they could go out and seek a unit that's smaller or a unit that's larger if they can keep it underneath that payment standard. So it's really their shopping budget, I guess we could say. That's kind of how we like to think of it, as people are going and searching a unit out on the open market. Financials of a public housing agency. Our budget is determined by looking at the previous year. So we largely work off of what our last fiscal year wrapped up with. If we end up not utilizing all of the funds that we've been authorized by HUD, then we very well might lose some dollars the next year. We do not like to have that happen because that can impact our programming. But a far majority of our funding comes from HUD. Our budgets are really broken down into two parts. So that's what does it consist of? So our administrative fees and our programmatic fees. Programming is the big chunk that goes towards actually paying the subsidies on behalf of our clients. Remaining administrative fees cover about 70% of our overhead costs for our office, and around 30% is covered by Albemarle County. But again, we determine this budget by looking at the previous year. I go through a 2-year tool that I work through with HUD to be able to project out how many vouchers we want to issue and the type of budget that we're going to be looking at. And then we're constantly trying to ride this, projection scheme with the 2-year tool of trying to keep some funds in reserve to be financially conservative, but also being sure that we are leasing up and not holding on to excess funds. So it's formed often by starting with HUD. We as a unit work with HUD to be able to define our budget, and then it heads up and is board approved. And I've not gone through that process yet. So that's going to need to be something that I'm, talk through with Phyllis as we work through that budget approval process. And one interesting thing that we're going through right now is understanding how we as a unit work through grants and work through existing funding. I come from a nonprofit background, and I'll be writing a lot of grants and trying to do some creative things with grant dollars. But then we also have existing funds that we're receiving and sometimes get additional funds on top of those that are already just authorized through HUD. But that's the financial picture. We operated around $3.5 million a year in HAP, and then also about $500,000 a year in administrative fees. And again, that adjusts from year to year based on the amount of vouchers that we are putting out. So the Board of Supervisors, our relationship with the board, they are technically, from a PHA perspective, considered a Board of Commissioners. And our executive director for our PHA is Phyllis. She also is, as you are well aware, is the director of social services. So it's kind of an interesting structure that we have set up in the way that we operate, but it works quite well. Our relationship with the board, there are several things that we try to work on with the board and need a board approval for. Number one is that administrative plan, which I can go into. The board also approves our 5-year plan. They provide fiscal oversight, budget approval, and we go through the appropriations process. So the administrative plan, just so you're aware, that is publicly available, and that is our rule book when we make any decision. None of the decisions that our PHA makes are based on subjectivity. We base it in the text that is written into an administrative plan. And that's hard because we are certainly in human services and are focused on customer service with our clients, but we also have a board approved administrative plan that we run by. And we have the ability to adjust that and change that on a case-by-case basis. I will be putting forward some proposals at some point to some changes to our administrative plan, but it largely guides how we do what we do. And I'd love to share more about that if you'd like to see our administrative plan and see the way we tick. Or you may have already read through the entire thing from front to back. Good job if you have, because it's quite dense. The 5-year plan is basically our strategic plan for a PHA, which is separate from DSS's plan. It is county approved, signed by the county executive, and relays to HUD what our goal is, what our goals are over 5 years. Currently, we're focused on development of our programs. We're focused on staffing changes, ensuring that we're maximizing the usage of vouchers that we have, maximizing the usage of our budget, and that we're seeking out new vouchers. And fortunately, we are checking almost all of those boxes right now, which is exciting for us to be moving towards some great steps and progress with our 5-year plan. So in closing, some of our current and future goals, and this kind of is going to tie right into Stacy's presentation. Right now, we are working towards leasing up 115 new families. We have our HCV 90, as we've called them, which basically will be 90 new tenant-based vouchers where clients can find a place to live anywhere within Charlottesville, Albemarle, Louisa, Nelson, Fluvanna, and Greene, so the Thomas Jefferson District. We also have our mainstream 10, which 5 of those are focused from the CARES Act, and 5 of them are previously awarded mainstream vouchers. And again, those are for folks with disabilities. And then we have our new grant that we're putting out, which are tied to homelessness. And so we're working through those and kind of porting individuals through TJAC into our voucher program. Going through a lot of organizational improvements with going digital and focusing on a lot of staff improvements and development and ensuring that we are going through process improvement as a unit. I'm a process improvement nerd, and so I'm really enjoying diving into organizational improvement and process improvement within our unit. In the future, we're going to be looking at self-sufficiency. So family self-sufficiency is actually something that's driven by HUD, but we also have a lot of great partnership potential right here at DSS, right across the hall from the self-sufficiency suite. So there's a lot of natural energy there that we could pull on. Building partnerships with community organizations and ensuring that we're doing outreach both ways. Working on new project-based vouchers. We have an RFP that was put forth, and we're working on the Southwood development right now, and may have some other project-based vouchers coming down the pipeline. And then our collaboration with community development, working alongside Stacy to do what we can to support any of the initiatives that are put forth in her proposal. Because we are a PHA and we focus on our programming, but we also have the ability to expand and do more. If we can find the right funding sources and if we can find the right people and the right players locally to be involved. So at the end of the day, we want to be a leading voice in Albemarle County for housing. And right now we have a pretty clear goal on what we're good at and what we do. And these are the voucher programs, but I believe we can do more. I think that's part of the reason that I was hired into this role. And I look forward to working alongside you all to hopefully build out some new programming, new initiatives for the Office of Housing. And that's all I have. Maybe some questions later on if anyone has them, but I can hand it off.
So why don't we go ahead and let Stacy go, and then we can open it up for questions for both of them. So Stacy, take it away.
Sorry, I lost the unmute button for a minute there. There we go. So again, my name is Stacy, and my actual correct title is Principal Planner for Housing. Sorry, Phyllis, I forgot what it was. And so I spent the majority of the past year working on a new housing policy for Albemarle County. And so Phyllis asked me to come today and give you a really brief update on that draft. The draft was completed and it's been gone to a work session with the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago. So I'm now officially allowed to make it all public. And it's a pretty lengthy document, so I'm just going to give you some really high-level overview of what is going on in there. But I thought it would be helpful to start with a little bit of background. The county currently has an affordable housing policy. It was adopted in 2004 as an appendix to the county's comprehensive plan. It went through some really minor amendments in 2015 when the county updated its comprehensive plan. I think there might have been some word changes, but it didn't change the essence of the objectives in the policy. In 2019, in the spring, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission released a housing needs assessment report for the region, which highlighted some significant affordable housing needs in the county. And so staff went forward at that time to the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission, recommending that we work to update our current housing policy. And so in July of 2019, the Planning Commission adopted a resolution of intent to amend our current comprehensive plan with the new housing policy, and I was set to work. One of the first things I did was do a number of different community outreach activities. I started with traditional community meetings. They were held in October. There were 3. They were held at the county office building in the evenings. The first one is fairly well attended. The other one's kind of dropped off. And there's a number of different reasons for that. And I sort of expected that to happen. And the people who attended those meetings are the types of people that typically attend these meetings. So they tended to be white and older and middle class. And so in order to be able to reach out and talk with people who actually experience affordable housing needs, I worked with the nonprofits in Charlottesville to set up a series of focus group discussions with the families and individuals they work with. And through that, I managed to talk to about 400 different individuals about their experiences. Some of the groups I worked with were Habitat for Humanity. I met with JABA, a number of different groups with JABA. I did reach out and work with AHIP. So it was a lot of the housing providers or service providers in the area. I also talked with nonprofit staff that work with those families to get their feedback. I provided opportunities for online feedback. So all of the materials that were presented during the community meetings in October were also summarized and placed online, along with feedback forms so that residents could go to the website, review the materials that were presented and discussed, and then provide comments there. And once all of those were finished, I took that in, all of the information collected from there, and worked with the stakeholder committee beginning in October of last year through February of this year. But so the stakeholder committee, I believe, had 9 members, and they represented a range of different groups. So there was someone from the Regional Housing Partnership. I had a senior homeowner. There was an affordable housing developer. So we tried to get a broad range of perspectives on that group. So going back to what we heard during the community outreach, we heard a lot. But first and foremost, the thing that we heard over and over and over again is that housing in the county is just too expensive for many residents. There were concerns that there was a lack of accessible housing for seniors and persons with disabilities. People wanted to protect existing older neighborhoods from either deteriorating further or becoming gentrified in some way and pushing the people that live there out. They talked about the wide-ranging impacts of a lack of affordable housing, so difficulties for local businesses to attract new employees or keep the ones they have. The impacts to our environment as people need to increase their commuting times as they move farther away. But overall, through these conversations, we identified 4 main barriers to affordable housing provision in the county. And those are the supply side problems, that we just don't have enough housing to meet need, period, let alone affordable housing needs. We have a lack of resources to support affordable housing. And that includes the funding sources, whether that comes from the county or access to federal resources or state resources. We also did not have efficient policies or programs in place to support affordable housing development and preservation. And the people that were involved in the conversations also identified a number of community-based issues. They really focused on the not in my backyard perspectives, that there's a lot of fighting when a new affordable housing development is brought forward for approval with the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors. That a lot of the neighborhoods surrounding that will come out and speak against it for various reasons. Too much traffic, too many students, and they felt that that was just because they were opposed to affordable housing. So I worked with a stakeholder group to come up with a number of objectives and strategies. And now I have to turn to my notes because I can't remember how many there were. There are, I believe, a total of 12 policy objectives and 39 corresponding strategies to support those objectives. I'm not definitely going to go through all 12 of those objectives and 39 strategies. That would be way too much today, but I will talk about it in 6 overarching policy categories. And those are increasing the housing stock, preserving housing, engaging with the community, fair housing and community equity. And I'm going to talk about those 4 more in length. The remaining 2 are homelessness and special populations. So finding ways to increase housing options for homeless individuals, helping families and individuals at risk of homelessness retain their housing. increasing the number of accessible units for persons with disabilities or the senior population. And really also looking at creating sustainable communities. So making sure that our communities include a mixture of housing for across the income spectrum, that they are close to neighborhood amenities and businesses so that people can walk more often. They include sidewalks and walking paths for alternative transportation, close to public transportation. So ways that we can make communities holistic and sustainable over the long term. But looking at increasing the housing supply, there are a couple really big key strategies included in this. So first is to increase the overall housing stock. So that's housing for everybody, no matter what your income is. We are anticipating, anticipate that we will need about 12,000 new housing units in the next 20 years. So really just encouraging more housing to be built in general. But in addition to that, ensuring that 20% of all new housing that is built in the county is provided as affordable housing. And that number was developed based on data that we have through the census that shows that approximately 20% of today's population or households are paying too much for their money, for their housing. So I held that number steady over the next 20 years, and that's where that 20% comes from. And so then increasing the affordable and workforce housing stock, a couple of things to go along with that. Creating an affordable dwelling unit program and a workforce dwelling unit program. The affordable dwelling unit program is enabled under state legislation. And that allows us to, when a developer comes in and requests a rezoning or a special use permit for their new residential development, they would be given the option of either building a percentage of those as affordable units or making a cash in lieu payment. Those would be the two choices. They have to choose one of those. Right now, we work on a proffer system, and if a developer does not proffer for affordable housing, then they don't have to provide it. I am also recommending, or the policy is recommending, that we redefine our definition of affordable housing and then create a new category called workforce housing. Currently, affordable housing is any housing that is affordable, any housing for which a household pays no more than 30% of their income for rent or mortgage payments. That is how it's defined in our current housing policy. And then we specify that affordable housing is for households who earns 80% of area median income or below. So I'm recommending we change this up and that we really look at concentrating rental housing on families with incomes at 60% AMI or below, and then tying the maximum rents for that affordable housing to the AMI itself. So currently it is based on HUD's fair market rents that you just saw in Philip's presentation. This would actually tie the maximum rent to the area median income. And it is, this calculation is 25% of 65% of AMI adjusted for bedroom size. And so what in most cases, this puts the maximum affordable rent in the county below the fair market rent. In a few cases, it's slightly higher than the fair market rent. And so looking at the efficiencies, that's actually about $59 less than the current fair market rent, and $185 less for a 4-bedroom fair market rent. So there's some significant swings. It doesn't make a huge difference, but I think it goes more in line with what households earn. For owner-occupied housing, I am recommending that those go towards households earning no more than 80% of AMI. And that gets tied to the federal home program purchase price limits for existing housing, and that sale price would be $191,750. Our current affordable sale price is $243,750. So there's a huge difference there. And I think that the recommended price point goes is far more in line with local salaries. Workforce housing would be defined as households with incomes between 60 and 120% of area median income. And then the maximum rents would be based off of the fair market rent, but would be set 110% higher than that. And the maximum sale price would be $215,150. Looking at preserving existing housing and communities, there are really 3 or 4 key strategies. One is a tenant anti-displacement policy. The board passed such a policy last year. And I have just finished writing the guidelines for that. And that is really to protect tenants of existing rental properties. And that would be multifamily properties, so apartment buildings or mobile home parks that are going to be redeveloped. We cannot do it if the developer comes in and does it by right. We can't protect the tenants, but if they come to the county and again ask for a rezoning or a special use permit or funding support, then this policy would apply. And it very closely aligns with the Federal Uniform Relocation Act. Should that federal policy be in effect for that particular development, then that takes precedence. Our policy would not be valid. Yeah.
Amy just left a chat. Amy, are you asking to ask the question now, or can we wait till she's done?
I'm just afraid to get too far along because it's so much information that I would hate to make us go back. And if that's, but if it's up to you, Phyllis, I also have to, I know that I have to go pick up my kids at, I have to leave probably by 4:45.
Well, given that we're likely going to have questions for Philip too.
You want me to hold off? I can. I'll put them, I'm going to type them up and then.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Okay. Go ahead, Stacy.
Okay. We're recommending that rental inspection districts be identified, and those are specific areas in the county that the county would focus sort of proactive rental inspections. And the idea is to address health and safety concerns, protect neighborhoods from decline, and really discourage slumlords from providing housing in the county. And then also looking at a number of ways to measure different aspects of affordable housing and neighborhood change. So those would be affordable housing impact statements and a series of metrics that we would measure. Community engagement, fair housing, and community equity. Really, those are developing a permanent housing advisory committee, which would have membership across a range of different areas. So developers, business owners, the legal profession, nonprofit organization, and county residents definitely would be in there. And then coming up with an equity assessment tool. So in terms of the assessment and impact tools, the equity assessment tool is really a way to evaluate the impact of policies, programs, initiatives, et cetera, on racial equity within our neighborhoods and community and county at large. The tool would help protect against unintentional discriminatory impact on protected classes when developing and implementing programs and policies. And we would be working with the county's Office of Equity and Inclusion to create that. Affordable housing impact statements are really used to measure the potential impact of a proposed development, ordinance, or policy on our affordable housing stock. They would not be able to be used to deny a development that a developer came for, a project a developer put forward, but it would help the county identify areas that we would perhaps need to add additional affordable housing units, or areas where housing is becoming concentrated, and work with the developers hopefully to improve their project. The stakeholder committee identified 6 priority strategies, and these 6 include providing incentives to developers to increase the production of affordable rental housing instead of home ownership. Develop an affordable dwelling unit program and workforce dwelling unit program. Create a sustainable housing trust fund for the county that would include potential outside sources of investment. Create a standing housing advisory committee. Really examine the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance to make sure that they, both work together, and because right now they tend to work against each other at moments. And then also to make sure that they include a number of strategies and to increase affordable housing. And they also identified really looking at an opportunity to create more supported affordable housing in the county. The policy also includes a number of metrics to track our progress. So looking at total housing units and making sure that we build 11,750 new units by the year 2040, and 20% of those are affordable. And making sure that we have 5,040 affordable owner-occupied units in the next 20 years, and over 5,000 affordable rental-occupied units by 2040. Working with Philip to find ways to attract 10 new landlords to the Housing Choice Voucher program each year, helping prevent homelessness for 40 individuals and families, adding 10 new shelter beds to our area, and then creating 150 new units of affordable and accessible housing by the year 2030. And those would be for either seniors or persons with disabilities. And that's my whirlwind tour of the housing policy.
All right. So Amy, why don't we start with you, since I want to be sure you have an opportunity to ask your questions.
Casey, that was amazing, honestly. And Philip, but that it really is so comprehensive. I'm just wondering, I love the idea of tying the maximum rent to the median income, but because it's not also what fair market, how do you, I don't understand how that's implemented then. And then the same thing with the housing, the owner occupied. How do we tackle that?
So right now, our housing policy states that affordable rental units, the maximum rent is set at whatever the fair market rent is. That made it easy to switch between the Housing Choice Voucher program. And so people with the Housing Choice Voucher could use their voucher easily to move into an affordable unit. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the county that don't have a voucher. So this is a way to try to make it easier for them. And so it's really taking the income limits that Philip showed previously in his slides, taking 65% of that. Well, let me change that. 65% of the area median income, which is currently $93,900. So 65% of that, and then take 25% of that amount and then adjust it by the household size. So it'll be lower for one person. So it works the same way that the fair market rents do. It's just that anyone that was, any projects that were, say, proffering housing affordable rental units, that's the maximum rent they would be able to charge. And we track that with the proffer units.
So then any new unit, the maximum rent would be set by tying it to the median income.
Right.
So how does it though provide for more vouchers? I don't think I'm clear on that. If it helps Philip's folks get more vouchers, is that what you're saying?
No, so the affordable rent for non-voucher units, those are still going to be marketed. It will be up to the landlords whether or not they would accept the vouchers like they do now. So what I'm hoping we can do through the policy is to develop different incentives to get landlords to accept the vouchers. This is the biggest problem with the vouchers. One is rents are too high in our area. But two, even if you're given a voucher, many families are not able to successfully use them before the voucher expires because landlords, excuse me, just don't want to accept vouchers. So I'm hoping that I can help Philip find ways to increase the number of landlords willing to take those.
What is the barrier for people accepting the vouchers?
Oh gosh, there's many. Do you want to tackle that, Philip, or do you want me to do it?
Maybe a little tag team. I mean, that's a complex answer in many ways, but the stigma that comes with a voucher is probably is part of it. You know, there are sometimes there's, you know, to a voucher holder, there's perhaps some issues that may show up in a background or may show up in looking at a previous rental history that may be concerning for a landlord. But those are no different than what may pop up in a non-voucher holder's check. But the barriers are largely just, I believe that they're largely driven by a stigma about that source of income, which now with the source of income law that's passed, it is discrimination to refuse to rent to someone based on the source of income. So based on the fact that they're a voucher holder. Doesn't mean that landlords aren't going to find a way to not rent to voucher holders by setting their rent higher, for instance. But yeah, those barriers are kind of baked into the equation in some ways. So what Stacy's doing, and part of what I'll just speak to what I'm doing. You know, one of the things that we're thinking about and working towards are better owner outreach strategies, and so engaging with landlords, creating a customer service experience for them, and a quick response time to any issues that they have. And one of the things that I'm trying to do as well, we are trying to do is adhere to the administrative plan, which protects tenants, but also protects owners. Because it doesn't help our owners when, if we get into a situation where we are not upholding our end of a deal, our end of a contract, and allowing, you know, certain tenants or certain situations to harm the owner. So we're trying to kind of help both sides to try to create an environment maybe that's more suitable to owners participating in the program. Stacy, did you want to provide?
My extensive landlord outreach experience. Just to background, before I came to Charlottesville, I was a landlord outreach coordinator for a voucher program in Pittsburgh. I think Philip's right, stigma is a huge part of it. But landlords they find the program a bit bureaucratic, a bit difficult. The housing quality inspections, many of them find to be a bit excessive. They happen annually. They happen every time somebody leaves your unit. So if a voucher holder moves into a unit in August, they end up being evicted in November, then they will probably have another inspection in December. So some of it is program related. A lot of it is stigma. And then a lot of it is the rents are lower, way lower in many cases in our area. And so it just makes more financial sense for landlords to put it out on the market.
Can I weigh in on that? So I know from the DSS perspective, when our workers are trying to help families find housing, the stigma issue is probably the biggest barrier. And the landlords are just concerned about, you know, what's going to happen, you know, to the house or to the apartment, and then impact on the neighborhood. And so one of the things that our staff do, in addition to our housing staff, is really try to advocate for our customers and you know, try to dispel some of those myths that carry along with the customer.
But it does feel like it should have some reassurance that with a voucher is like an assured payment. Is that, you know what I'm saying? almost take
No,
some of the risk.
that's a great point, and that's one of the arguments in favor of the program is that it does guarantee rent, and some clients pay little to nothing because their income is so low, and so it guarantees that that landlord's going to get a steady check month in, month out. So that certainly is an argument in favor. And same with project based, as I was mentioning earlier, and as Stacy works to try to encourage new developments in our area, new project based vouchers. It's the same thing there, where you have then a guarantee that you're going to get that check at the same amount month in, month out.
I was wondering, if you guys don't mind, I had one more question. It was about the project base. Is there other tenants in those developments that are not voucher based, or is it strictly voucher?
Absolutely. So moderate rehab, the Scottsville schools entirely project based, but those are moderate rehab. Our project-based vouchers, so for instance, Treesdale, there are a subset of the total units on the property that are project-based. That is by design to encourage it to be mixed use and to encourage the units to not all be voucher holders. We have a set number that we can set into each, and this is defined by HUD. It's either 25% of the total units or 25 units, period. So as we are looking at new strategies for issuing new project-based vouchers, and we put out a request for proposals across the community for people to say, hey, we want to build this property and we want some project-based units in it. We're able to put out exactly how many we'd like. And often it boils down to, though, not having too many in that property based on a lot of different factors. But yes, there are units within project-based voucher. I guess some would be buildings, other are multiple buildings on a property, but within a property, there's a set number, and the others are available to rent by anyone.
Did have two more questions, unless somebody else has some.
And you should go ahead since you have you go first.
So is there, actually there's three, sorry, as I'm going through my notes. Why is the voucher number going down in terms of Philip, you had mentioned because of COVID that I just wrote down that you said that I don't understand what was going down, the amount the voucher is worth or how many vouchers.
So fair market rents went down. So fair market rents is saying this is what would have to pay to rent on the fair, to provide to rent in this market. Fair market rents went down. That's defined by HUD. We don't have any control over that. So I don't know why that went down in the middle of where we are economy-wise and with the pandemic. It doesn't make sense to us. So we're all kind of scratching our heads as an Office of Housing team as to why that happened. Our reaction, though, we're currently at 100% of FMR, meaning if HUD says 854 is what the fair market rent is for an efficiency, we're at 100% of that, meaning we're saying 854 is what we're going with. Because that's gone down this year, we're proposing increasing hours. We have the ability to ride between 90% and 110% of FMR. We're going to propose increasing ours slightly so that our clients don't feel that impact immediately. So we're trying to do our part to make sure that our clients aren't feeling that decrease. That still needs to be approved, but I'd like to pitch that to Phyllis so that we can, and this is maybe news to Phyllis because we're just talking about it at an office level right now to put forward a proposal. But we have no control over where FMRs go. But the hope is that eventually they would go back up, and you would assume they would go up year after year as rents increase. I mean, that's the way it works. Why don't they go up? I don't know, but talk to HUD, I guess. I mean, we don't know why that happened.
So the amount HUD is giving is actually the same amount, or is it less than they were?
Right. So it's not tied to HUD necessarily. It's not tied to the amount they're giving us per unit or per voucher. We're allotted a certain amount of money each year in our annually awarded budget. We can use that however we see fit. Our goal is to always administer either the max amount of vouchers that we've basically signed and agreed that we have, which is north of 500, or use the max amount of money that we have. Okay, so right now we're use this 2-year tool. I'm always projecting ahead to try to say we need to lease up more because we have enough money to do so. So we have a lot of capacity right now. And one of the things that has hit us and that we're diving through right now is that we have a sizable amount of money and we have a sizable amount of vouchers. There are reasons as to why we are where we are. I'm looking forward as to how we can fix the situation, and fixing the situation is that HCD 90, where we're trying to lease up 90 tenant-based vouchers in the coming 3 to 4 months, which is a pretty massive increase. Right now we're doing 284 and we're going to add 90 to it. So it's going to be a pretty big move, but it's what we need to do. And it's what we have the ability to do. And my goal, number one, is to serve clients in our community and get them into units. And so we have the ability to do so in that direction. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, it does actually. So the number on the wait list it wasn't clear to me that there is a wait list. It seems like there's a 2-step process, and first there's the initial, application, and then a wait list, and then the final. So is there a wait list?
There is, yeah. And it's, bureaucracy at its finest, the process and the way it's set up. Once they go through the application, that's kind of, look at it as a small application, and they sit on our wait list, and then they go through eligibility, which is much larger. So right now we do have a wait list. We're pulling some right now, so it's fluid, but I think we're at like 170 or 180 families sitting on our wait list. So I don't like those numbers. I'd like to see all those people housed, but we're working within the system, the structure that HUD set forth, and that's the voucher program, which takes time. But we do have a waiting list right now, yes.
And then my last question was, you had mentioned 2 numbers, 3.5 million are part of project, and then $500,000 was the admin. So is that the amount of the vouchers, the amount of money you have for vouchers? Is that what that's reflecting?
Mm-hmm. That's the 3.5. That's what we have for vouchers, and that's for everything. So from our housing choice voucher to our project base to our moderate rehab. That gets dispersed on like a monthly basis, and it's based on the previous 3 months of vouchers that we've had leased up based on our reporting. So it fluctuates. We might get to the end of the year and have only used and therefore been awarded 3.2 million. It fluctuates. And so it is a really incredibly confusing accounting process. I would be more than happy though to show you all the numbers that we have and show you all of our award statements on a more regular basis if you'd like to see them, just so you can understand a better picture of it. But it is it's kind of a confusing accounting process that we go through. But yes, that's the amount that goes towards our HAP, to our programming. And the other is a combination of a portion that HUD puts forth and then a portion that the county puts forth for our overhead, for our administrative fees.
And that was 70% HUD and 30% county fee money. And that's
Correct.
For the admin staff, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's to pay for our staffing. That's to pay for our benefits, any of our ongoing IT costs. I can also provide the budget on that broken down. But
all right, I think that was all I had. And I love the idea of using a customer service for landlords, honestly, to help them accept these vouchers as a stable income, as like risk averse or whatever you want to call it. And by the way, Stacy, almost 12,000 units, that's huge. I'm sure Jenny knows about it from the Planning Commission. That's a lot of units.
And that's to cover everybody. That's not affordable units. That's just units in general. That's what has been projected given anticipated population growth. I know. And Philip, I do want to say real quick, today I saw that FY21 FMRs have been released, which they've gone back up.
what?
Yeah, so an efficiency is now $9.49 a month.
So our staff saw the FMRs and we all were crossing our fingers that maybe that was like a typo or something. And that's good to know. Thank you. I will
You're welcome.
look at that and adjust our proposal. That's okay.
So, Catherine, did you have some
I
questions?
did, but my daughter and grandchildren are leaving for Norfolk, so I'm gonna have to go. May I call you, Philip? I have some, I think they're addressed to you. But may
Absolutely.
I get back in touch with you? Because one of the questions I've been asked 3 times, and I thought I was clear and I thought I was right, but I need professional answers for it. So,
Catherine, I'll send you his contact information.
yeah, and let me follow through with that. The one thing I do want to say before I leave is not off the subject. I just need to toss it out right quick. The Colesville Baptist Church that's on Hurd Mountain has set up their church fellowship hall for any children in that area that don't have Wi-Fi, cannot get on to do their schoolwork. So they have a schedule. It started today, 8 till 2. On Wednesdays, 12 to 2. Thursday, 8 till 3. And on Fridays, 8 to 12. And if anyone want to help volunteer for this, it's fine. But they are doing that because a lot of kids living in our area that just don't have Wi-Fi. So some of the social workers or whoever that comes across social services, I really want them to know it. And they do have it on their Facebook page as well. So, but I just have to, I'm going to say goodbye. It was my birthday, so they were here. So now I got to go.
Happy birthday.
Hey.
It actually was Friday, but they've been here since then. They actually did schoolwork here today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm
Okay, I think so. Catherine's gone to enjoy her birthday. I see Diantha's with us. Diantha, did you want to ask some questions?
I did want to ask a question, and I have to apologize. It's very tacky to get up and leave a meeting. I'm sorry I was called away, and then come back and ask a question that may have been discussed while I was gone. And so if I apologize ahead, but I was just wondering, do we have an up-to-date list of where the apartment complexes are and the housing is that the locations that accept vouchers? And maybe you all have already talked about that.
So
My understanding is they're pretty much all in one area. They're not spread out throughout the urban ring in the county.
So I'll talk to the list real quick. So we keep an ongoing list that we update as frequently as we have the ability and resources and time to, with landlords that are willing to say, hey, I accept the voucher. We, by design though, HUD does not allow us to, hand somebody a list and say, here's where you go, here's where you should go look for one.
Right, sure.
Or the general information. So I can speak to, from the list side of things. But it's kind of an open market system, and Stacy probably can speak to this in far better detail than I can, but and also as to where they are location wise, just because I'm still new and pulling together some of that mapping. But it's market driven. So people go where the rents are cheapest. And if all of the rents are concentrated in one area cheapest, then that's where folks will go. And we don't have the ability or a mechanism baked into our administrative plan to say, no, you cannot rent there. However, we do have one of our goals as we report to HUD is that we're doing our part to deconcentrate poverty and to encourage individuals to rent in areas where there is not a high level of poverty. So we very well can guide in that direction, but it doesn't say that we can force people to rent in a certain area and force people to not rent in a certain area.
So let me just clarify what I'm saying. I'm not saying that what you're saying. I'm saying that my understanding is that the vast majority of apartment owners or managers don't respond and don't want to accept vouchers It's not about people that there's a concentration of those apartments and areas. There's a natural concentration because it's the only place where there are apartments that are willing to take vouchers or housing vouchers. I'm saying that it's more, I'm saying it's that while you're saying it's market driven, and I understand that, you have to also have managers and owners that are willing to even come to the phone and talk about it and take the vouchers.
Right. And
That's the problem that I've understood just from my years of talking about this when I was on the school board.
okay, sure. And that's one of the things that I have on my long to-do list is to work on owner outreach and is to reach into areas where we maybe are not currently renting or in areas that are, and you know, it's driven by the rent. So if someone charges more in one area than we, you know, even though I might reach out to a landlord there and say, hey, can you accept a little less? There's no guarantee that they will, but outreach is critical. And I am developing outreach and owner and landlord engagement strategies. And I will probably pull in Stacy's expertise, having done that for years, but to try to reach out and develop those relationships with owners in areas that are deconcentrated.
Yeah, because I think we're concentrating, I guess what I'm saying is we're concentrating in one area, and it's based on the fact that that's the area where people are willing to come to the table and take the vouchers. I don't know, Stacy, maybe if you want to add anything.
Yeah.
Verify.
Yeah, Philip would have to map all of the voucher addresses in some top secret way so that we couldn't actually see the addresses.
You actually had a list back in the day when I was, Dean Tisdale actually had a list of the complexes that would accept them and that would not.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would
That
actually.
list is very old now. I mean,
Yeah. Philip, you would be able to pull up a list of landlords that you work with, and then find the ones that, you know, have the most units is what
it'd be interesting to see where what the concentration is. That's all I'm saying is how they're.
So if you recall, several years ago when we had the joint Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission and School Board meeting, and I presented I call them the heat maps, although I'm told that wasn't exactly the right term, about where CPS referrals are coming from. And one of those showed where we have vouchers, and it was disguised because we had to do it in such a way that somebody could not identify the address, but at least it showed you kind of a visual of where the vouchers are being leased. But if you put aside the vouchers that we have in Scottsville and in Meadows, in Crozet, is it your sense, Philip, that then if putting aside those, the majority are it being leased in the urban ring? Do you know enough to know if that's a true statement?
One area in the urban ring is
right.
That was what my understanding was from a few years back.
And what I can say is this: I will admit that I do not have that data on hand and have not crunched that data yet. Phyllis asked me for this beforehand, and I did not have that prepared. That is in part that I'm new, and in part that I have not gotten to pulling that data yet and crunching those numbers. However, if that's something you would like to see, I will pull that together. And I do believe that is valuable information to have as we're looking at what we are doing and what strategies we're implementing. I can say that I'm driven by data, and that's how I like to make any decision. And so as we're looking at strategies and mechanisms that we have and levers we can pull, for instance, with project-based vouchers or with our owner outreach strategies, starting with that data is critical. And so doing a market analysis of where our units are is a great point, and is a great point to start at. I don't have that right now, and I know that Phyllis looked at it in the past, and I'm sure I can find that data and present it to you.
Phyllis, maybe a starting point would be to go back to that joint meeting where the three, because I remember sitting there looking at that data, and it was informative.
Right.
Yeah.
I will definitely pull
that
that
was
up.
about what, 4 years ago? I mean,
It was soon after I became director, so I think it's about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think 4 years in the realm of things is not that, maybe that old, but that would be a starting point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, for, you know, what information you can draw from that data. And then Diantha, you may have stepped away because Amy was asking a similar question that I actually had to about, you know, how if people are having trouble identifying landlords that will accept the vouchers. And both Stacy and Philip were talking about the stigma and a variety of reasons why, you know, a particular landlord, whether it's like a private owner, because I was wondering about that, like, do people have better luck with a private owner or like a complex, you know? And but so I think that's a lot of it is that engagement with the owners and working through the stigma. And to Amy's point about, you know, is there not something that should be reassuring to them about participating in this program, because there's a level of certainty about, you know, a part of the rent that's guaranteed. So I think back to, I think kind of what you're getting at too is, you know, how to Philip and his team do that outreach and like have that education piece to try to get it. So the ideal goal is people are offered more choices and can pick from different places all over the county where they, you know, want to be closer to where they work or closer to transit or out here in Crozet or wherever it is, and not have these very limited, especially if you have 90 new vouchers coming on. So giving more choices for that. And I had another, and Diantha, did you want to ask more about that? Because I had a question about the actual for sale affordable units.
Yeah, just to point out that I think some of our land use decisions, as well as what's happening right now, is we're concentrating poverty in certain areas, right? And we're limiting people's ability to choose to live other places. Anyway, and we should, when we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and I'm using the broader we and using this country, right? And land use decisions. And so that's all. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think if we learned anything, if we should have learned anything, we should have learned that, you know, putting out everybody that in this one place is a terrible way to do things. And, you know, this idea that Stacy kind of touched on too about, you know, the not in my backyard piece, if there's an affordable component to a proposed development, is a really terrible way of thinking, but we do see that in the community a lot. But the large part of those projects are lots of market rate units, and then there's the affordable piece mixed in, which is that's what we want to be doing, right? And then offering those choices, like you were saying, Diantha, in all over the place, so people have more choice. So my question about maybe for Stacy is about the affordable units that are for sale. We know that we lose some of those into the market without them ever selling to someone. And so I wondered what process is in place to help identify individuals, families that are qualified to purchase the affordable units. And how does that work? Like how do these people get connected in so they're, you know, they've gone through the financial process to learn what they can and can't afford. So when we have an affordable unit come up for sale, that we are doing our best to connect those people with that opportunity.
So right now, when a for sale proffer, when I get notification from a developer that one of their for sale proffer units is ready to go on market, that kind of kicks off the 90-day period window for finding a qualified buyer. I send a notification out to the nonprofits, particularly PHA, since they do the home buyer education and they already have clients that they're working with who are prepared to purchase a home. The biggest problem is that the sale price we currently have now of $243,000-ish is just too high for many of those families to afford. So while they qualify for a mortgage, they don't qualify for a $244,000 mortgage. So that's why I'm recommending that we knock that price down for the affordable housing to under $200,000, and then for workforce housing at about $215,000. The $215,000, the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust, the 4 houses they built in the city most recently, that's about what they sold for. And they sold at least one of those to a teacher whose income was about 50% AMI. So that's a great target range. And that tells me that, you know, I'm good putting it in that level. So the affordable housing piece, I did want that to be under 200,000 to expand that. So that's what we do right now.
Okay.
There's a couple things in place. The Regional Housing Partnership and Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission are working on getting a website set up that will list properties for either rent or for sale. Because part of the problem is that we don't have a good mechanism for developers when they have the proffered units to advertise those, besides me sending an email. So this will be a place that they'll be able to go to and list their units for sale. We'll be able to provide a link to that website so that people can go find it. I'm also looking on the new website to begin listing those ourselves so that county staff who might qualify for the units would be able to see what's there, or anyone really. So we're working on different mechanisms. We just don't have any at the moment.
Great. So it sounds like the part of the strategy is, you know, getting that information out, and then also making the affordable. Sounds like there's lots of folks that might hear about it and be working with someone who can connect them, but the price isn't working for them. So
yeah,
it sounds like there's like a kind of 2-pronged approach to that. Because I was a little, at first I was kind of shocked when you shared the number at the request of the planning commissioner about how many units were actually sold and didn't just go back into the market. But then when I thought about it more, I really don't know why I was shocked. And I don't know if there's a way with the 90-day thing. I mean, that's not very long, but then I totally get the other side of that, of holding on to a unit for how long can you really ask someone to hold on to a unit while we connect, you know, a buyer in. But I mean, in the world of buying a home and trying to connect people in, that even once the number gets lowered, where that makes more sense, that still is pretty fast. 90 days, that's quick, you know, timing for. I mean, that's from you. The permit, is that from like it getting a CO issued, and from where's the clock start?
I may get that wrong. I'll have to check on that one.
Okay. I was just curious if it's like when they give you the word, or if it's the CO issued, then they have, you know, that's when that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely certain.
Okay.
I think it's from when they send me the notice, because they will often send me the notice before they have the CO, in anticipation of receiving the CO in 90 days. That way they have somebody lined up. There is the option that, and this did not happen. If the county were to go towards an affordable dwelling unit program, then we would have the option to work in something that says you have to market it for 60 days to income qualifying households. At the end of that 60-day period, you then have 30 days for a nonprofit provider or the county to purchase those units instead. And so then that way they might not be able to be sold to an income qualifying buyer within that time period that we have set, but they would be reserved for someone later. So like the Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust could purchase the unit and put it into their housing stock, which means you would then have that affordable home would be affordable for 99 years. So we just don't do that now. So that's an option we can look at.
Okay, thank you. And since I'm the only member left here, I think I had a question, but you know, I don't know if we want to get into very specific actual apartment complexes, but I get, and so that could be something I ask either of you privately or through email or whatever, but you know, in Crozet, because that's my district, so I'm, you know, a little more intimately familiar with that. You know, rentals has been an issue, generally speaking, just finding a rental regardless of how much you can afford to pay. And then with the you know, we have a something in Old Trail that's online now, and then we have another apartment complex that's hopefully going to have rental units available. And so my understanding is that there are some, it's like 15 or 20% will be affordable in the View in Crozet. So I don't want to put you on the spot with like specific numbers, but I guess I'm really hoping that we've had a lack of rentals, generally speaking, and now with two bigger apartment complexes in the area, I'm hopeful that there will be an affordable piece to that, or even like a voucher piece, which would be super awesome, but I don't know if the prices are right for that to work. So
I don't know. I have to, I'm
yeah.
fairly certain the View has proffered affordable units. But I have to go back and check.
Yeah, I think they got some HUD funding, so I think there's a affordable component there. And at one point I'd heard something about the Summit doing a affordable piece, or even maybe a voucher piece, but I'm not sure about that, so I don't want to put you guys on that very specific spot. But I guess from a Crozet perspective, you know, yay, we're getting more rental units, but you know, gosh, that they sure do look expensive. So we're still not getting that diversity and that opportunity for folks to have that in the area. Yeah, and that kind of gets back to a piece of Stacy's presentation about you know, where we do have affordable housing stock in Crozet. A large part of that is around the downtown area, which, you know, wants to become dense in nature, like you would and you know, from a planning perspective, you'd have that more dense closer to downtown. But in Crozet, we have not so much the dense existing old Crozet housing, but a lot of our existing affordable housing stock is in that area. So that's kind of getting at the point you made in your presentation, is not to displace that. So how do we enhance that? How can we infill that? In sort of a delicate balance that I think you acknowledged in more in depth in your other presentation. But that's something that I think, you know, in this particular area, we're very sensitive to, because we have folks that if otherwise they couldn't afford to live where they've always lived for years and years and years. I mean, I even heard someone say that in the 50s they bought a home somewhere here in Crozet, and for what they pay in taxes annually now, then they're still in that home. But that's kind of a shocking thing to think about. So but anyways, I was just curious about, you know, I'm excited to see more rentals, but then worried that we're still missing the mark when it comes to making those accessible. So I thank you guys very much. Phyllis, you can see if there's public that wanted to ask a question. Is there anybody? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, Serena would let me know, but
okay.
We have no public questions.
Okay. So that's all I had. I mean, thank you guys very much.
We can't hear you, Jenny.
Oh, maybe something. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions I had, and thank you both very much for bringing this to us. That was really great, very comprehensive. Welcome aboard, Philip, and hopefully you're adjusting, like you said, during this unusual time.
Trying to.
Yeah.
Nothing like onboarding during a pandemic.
Right.
We're very happy he's here.
Very good. Well, we're glad you're here, and thanks for, I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. And it sounds like, Phyllis, you can connect other members with either Stacy or Philip if they had specific questions. And hopefully the folks that weren't able to make it today can look at the slide deck. I think was Philip's presentation with that too, or just Stacy's? Were they both in that?
Lisa sent it out subsequent.
Okay, so that's
They're
so
two
they can,
separate emails.
right.
But I'll send it. I will send it also in my message out.
Great. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And
Thank you both very much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Job well done.
Oh, the birthday girl's back.
Well, I had to say goodbye. They were saying they gotta go. Okay, thanks a lot. I'll handle it later when I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. So, Phyllis, since it's, me and you, and do you want to go through your informational items, or do you want to hold stuff for our next month's meeting, or?
Yeah, given that we only have a minute left, why don't we just save them for next month, and then we can.
Okay.
We'll also have September board info items, and if there are questions about either one, we can talk about it next month.
Okay.
Does that
Sounds
sound
good.
okay?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
And I think that I'll just get with Lisa. I think I might have something that I need to sign for her. And we've been doing that, and I can scan it back in to get it to her with my signature for minutes and things. So I'll just check with her about that. I can shoot her an email and see if she's missing something from me.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Well, thank you very much.
All right. I'll get the message out in the next day or two.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Serena.
Thank you.
No
Bye-bye.
problem. Bye-bye.